ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday morning session, and today we will begin with chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Om Sri Paramatmane Namaha. Ditiyo Adhyay. Now the second chapter is very fascinating, very interesting. Of course, every chapter of Gita is very fascinating. But second chapter is the first chapter where Sri Krishna starts his, spiritual dialogue with Arjun. But in the first verse, संजय बोले कि उपरोक्त प्रकार से करुणा करके व्याप्त और आंसुओं से पूर्ण तथा व्याकुल नेत्रों वाले शोक युक्त उस अर्जुन के प्रति भगवान मधुसूदन ने यह वचन कहा. Now you see, Arjun was completely in a turbulent shape from inside. So he was crying, obviously. जब नेत्र उसके नेत्रों में आंसू आ रहे हैं, so he was crying, and he was impatient. He was not determined inside what needs to be done. He was facing a dilemma, which किम कर्तव्य विमूढ़ था, what to do, what not to do. So this is the state of Arjun, and that is what has been described by Sanjay in the first verse. अब नेक्स्ट दो वर्स जो हैं वो बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग हैं. ये दोनों वर्सेज श्री कृष्ण की कही हुई हैं, लेकिन ये स्पिरिचुअल सेंस में नहीं कही हुई हैं. ये दोनों वर्सेज कही हैं एज ए फ्रेंड, क्योंकि वो आपस में फ्रेंड भी थे, रिलेटिव भी थे. So he is trying to give a shock treatment. So we will examine some of the words used in these two verses. These two verses are very, very fascinating, and we will discuss them now. The verse number 2, हे अर्जुन, तुमको इस विशल स्थल में यह अज्ञान किस हेतु से प्राप्त हुआ, क्योंकि यह न तो श्रेष्ठ पुरुषों से आचरण किया गया है, न स्वर्ग को देने वाला है, न कीर्ति को करने वाला है. देन वर्स नंबर 3, इसलिए हे अर्जुन, नपुंसकता को मत प्राप्त हो, ये तेरे योग्य नहीं है. हे परंतप, तुच्छ हृदय की दुर्बलता को त्याग कर युद्ध के लिए खड़ा हो. Now in this, the Sanskrit verse contains very fascinating words. The first word which has been used is kashmal. In the verse number 2, Kutatsava kashmal midam. Kashmal is a word which is used to describe all kinds of bad things in Sanskrit terminology. तो श्री कृष्ण अर्जुन को कह रहे हैं कि इस विषम स्थल में तुम्हें ये सब चीजें खराब तुम्हारे अंदर कैसे आ गई हैं. How you have reached this stage that you have accumulated all the bad things at this time. So this is one word which has been used, which is a very strong word in terms of Sanskrit, expressions. Then he has used the word anarya. Anarya is a derogatory term. Arya is the one that you are well brought up, you have etiquette, you are a good person, you are well educated. Then he using the term anarya in the same verse. Anarya just that how come you are behaving like anadi or a person who is not well educated in good etiquettes. So if we recollect what Arjun said in the first chapter, in the second part, he was talking like a erudite man, a person with all erudition, that if we do this, this will happen, that we are killing people. I don't want to kill even for the kingdom of the entire earth. Even if I am given the administration of all the three lokas, I will not like to kill anybody. and if we kill these people, the ladies will, they will become behave like prostitute, and one Shankar will be born. He's talking about all kinds of things there, and he's talking uh, like a pandit, a man with erudition, and he believes that that is the truth, that is the knowledge. And he never thought that Krishna will react like this. He thought that Krishna will agree to him, because that is what we do in our daily life. We always, in like in the war in Ukraine now, a large number of people are behaving like that. So the situation is that uh, Arjuna was expecting sympathy from Krishna on this issue, and the Krishna is using a language which is absolutely opposite of his expectations. He is using very, very harsh words. So what he is saying here, that Arjun, your thinking is entirely in wrong direction. This is full of all the bad things. This is full of incorrect behavior, anarya, and this is not going to lead you to either your prestige in the society, or leading you to the heaven, or going to give you something good out of it. And it was shocking for the Arjun to listen to that. And then in the next verse, he even uses a very, I think that the most derogatory term which anybody can use for Arjun. That is klevayam. The first word, klevayam. Klevayam is napunsak. That, Arjun is a great Kshatriya. He's a great warrior. And for him, describing him as napunsak, that you are, completely important, he must have been taken as, under shock. It must be in a shock treatment. So, but these are not in the spiritual sense. These words have been used primarily as a friend to give a shock treatment to another friend. And in the second verse, there is another very interesting word which has been used. That is netatvami upadatte. That is very interesting term in Sanskrit. It says that these are not befitting of your behavior, of your stature. These kind of things are not of your stature. So that is a consolation to Arjun. Krishna says that, you are much higher in terms of your stature, in terms of your prestige, in terms of your reputation, in terms of your conduct so far. And the way you are behaving now, that is not in consonance with all those yardsticks and parameters which have been set for you. So this is what Krishna is telling him in these two verses, that what you are going to do and what you are thinking and what you are telling me, it appears that you are very, you are talking like a pandit, but you are not doing right things. You are talking of all the bad things. The word Kashmal, Anarya, and Klevayam. These are the words which are really very harsh words, and particularly in those days must have been very harsh. And then Netatvami Upadatte is a word where he is trying to console him that these are not up to your mark. Like we tell some students in the class that, it's like, motivating the person to behave better. Then you say, oh no, this is not befitting. You come from a great family. Why are you behaving like this? So that gives him a motivation. It's a motivating factor which has been used by Krishna in this verse. So the fundamentally these two verses, they are not spiritual. They are a shock treatment, just to tell Arjuna that you are totally on a wrong direction. Your thinking is in a very different direction. And one should realize this should be actually understood in a proper context. Why? Because Arjuna had a choice to choose either Krishna or his entire Narayani Sena. That was the option available to Arjuna when he went to Krishna for help. But he chose Krishna. He left the entire Narayani Sena. So obviously he thought Krishna is much more powerful than and much more important for him than the entire Sena. And now he is preaching Krishna. He thinks that he can preach Krishna and he can tell him all the knowledge of Shastras. So that was totally because he was perturbed. He didn't know what to do. So it was coming out of his emotional outburst. Because as soon as he saw Vishnu Pitama and Dronanacharya is standing right in front of me, I think his turbulence inside became very, very strong and he didn't know what to do. Because perhaps he could have tolerated the others, but it was not possible for him to see and how he will fight against these two. So that was perhaps one of the most important reasons, but that has been expressed now in the next verses which he has said. So these two verses are like a shock treatment. They are not verses of spiritual nature. They are not verses to tell him about the knowledge of Shastras, but just the sansaric, what we call the worldly treatment given to him, that you are totally on a wrong direction and don't think that what you are telling is something right. So this is how Krishna has used these two verses here. And then he tells him that you leave all this, durbalta, you leave all these weakness and come forward and fight the war. Don't become weak. Inside you are becoming absolutely weak at this time. You are coming from the Kshatriya caste and you are a great warrior. So it is not befitting for you to do this kind of thing. So this is what he tells him at this stage. And then, of course, Arjun is telling him his story again. He's continuing with the same profound knowledge of Shastras. And of course, he was shocked because of the presence of Vishnu Pitama and Dronacharya. So in the very first verse now, he talks about them. तो तब अर्जुन बोले कि हे मधुसूदन, मैं रणभूमि में भीष्म पितामह और द्रोणाचार्य के प्रति किस प्रकार बाणों से युद्ध करूंगा, उनके सामने कैसे मैं फाइट करूंगा. हाउ विल आई kill them, because those people are the most revered and respected people for me. How can I do that? And then he continues कि गुरुजनों को मारकर, now the word here has been used, गुरुनहत्वा. गुरुनहत्वा is the Sanskrit word. मैं गुरुओं की हत्या करके और फिर कैसे इस संसार में जीवित रहूंगा. That is what he is saying. So he says, इसलिए इन महानुभाव गुरुजनों को न मारकर इस लोक में भिक्षा का अन्न भी भोगना कल्याणकारक समझता हूं, क्योंकि गुरुजनों को मारकर भी मैं इस लोक में रुधिर से सने हुए अर्थ और काम रूप भोगों को ही भोगूंगा. Now this looks very practical and very sensible to anybody, because if somebody tells me to kill my guru who taught me in my childhood, I will perhaps react the same way. That what are you telling me? How can I kill my guru? He gave me all the education, he gave me all the knowledge which I have today. So it is not easy to digest. It looks easy in the Bhagavad Gita when we read it. But when you are standing in the battlefield there and fighting a war, it doesn't look that easy. And that is why this whole, 18 chapters were needed. Because even for us, even today, after reading Bhagavad Gita, after doing it looks very, difficult situation. This is what is happening in Ukraine and Russia. When the people are getting killed, and we are hearing so many people have been killed, so many houses have been destroyed, and so many, missiles are there. So many people have been wounded. So many children have been rendered homeless. Then all those things come into play. That why are we fighting this war? For what? This is destructive. Rather than doing this, I should better go in the forest and live there and eat my food by begging all around. That is what the feeling would come. but not necessarily, because there are certain things you have to fight for, and that is what Krishna is continuing to motivate Arjuna, and finally will succeed. So here he says कि दोनों पूजनीय. Naturally, he grew up. Actually, he was nurtured by Bhishma. Bhishma is his great grandfather. Drona was his teacher, and they gave him love and affection and all the technique of war, and all that knowledge he has is because of those two people. So naturally, he was shocked that how can I fight? It is a very natural sort of reaction of any human being. There's nothing wrong about it. And then naturally he said that rather than fighting, I can retire to a forest and beg and eat my food. Why do I have to kill them for this kingdom? So this was a very natural and reaction of an ordinary person. So that is how Krishna, the Arjuna reacted to that. Then the verse number 6. Now this is again, the verse number 6 is indeterminate, because here he is expressing his doubt on two things. Firstly, whether we should fight this war or not, whether it is right to fight. So he is questioning himself after looking at Bhishma and Drona. And secondly, he is not sure whether he will win the war. So the fear of losing the war is still constantly in his mind. That is one of the factors. So in this verse he says, और हम लोग यह भी नहीं जानते कि हमारे लिए क्या करना श्रेष्ठ है, अथवा यह भी नहीं जानते कि हम जीतेंगे या हमको वो जीतेंगे, और जिनको मारकर हम जीतना भी नहीं चाहते वे धृतराष्ट्र के पुत्र हमारे सामने खड़े हैं. So now this verse is basically a expression of his complete what you call dilemma, किम कर्तव्य विमूढ़ सिचुएशन, एंड ऑल्सो द फियर, जो डर उसको है कि मैं हमारा वार जीत पाएंगे नहीं जीत पाएंगे, वो दोनों चीजें कि हमें ये करना उचित है या अनुचित है, क्या हम इस युद्ध में जीत पाएंगे नहीं जीत पाएंगे, और अगर नहीं जीते और ये इतना ज्यादा विध्वंस हमने कर दिया तो उसका क्या फायदा. तो ये दिस शोज the what you call the core of his dilemma is in these two verses. The verse number in these three verses actually, or rather two, fourth and sixth. Fourth and sixth are the verses which are the core, which form the core of his dilemma. कि क्यों हमें युद्ध करना चाहिए, और वो कह रहा है कि इसलिए नहीं करना चाहिए कि हम गुरुओं को मार के हमारे लिए अच्छा नहीं है ये करना. This is not good for us, and it is better to beg and eat rather than to kill your own revered people. So this is how he ends up here. The uncertainty of winning the war is also ruling in his mind very well. इसलिए कायरता रूप दोष करके उपहत हुए स्वभाव वाला और धर्म के विषय में मोहित चित्त हुआ मैं आपसे पूछता हूं, जो कुछ निश्चय किया हुआ कल्याणकारक साधन हो वो मेरे लिए कहिए, क्योंकि मैं आपका शिष्य हूं, आपकी शरण में मैं आ गया हूं. नाउ he is completely in a dilemma, and therefore he says that I am surrendering to you. You tell me what is good, what should I do, what should I not do. You explain me what is my dharma in this particular very difficult context. So the word here in Sanskrit, it is dharma sammuchestha. That is, he doesn't know what should he do. He is completely perplexed so far as the dharma is concerned, what is good for him and what is not good for him. So this is what he tells in this verse number 7. And he tells that he surrenders to you, surrenders to Krishna. But at the same time, he continues to talk. On the one hand, he surrenders, that you tell me what is should be done, what is right, what should not be right, what is not right, and what should not be done, and what should be done. But at the same time, he makes his pronouncement, which is another contradiction. He makes his pronouncement that भूमि में निष्कंटक धन धान्य संपन्न राज्य को और देवताओं के स्वामीपन को प्राप्त होने के बाद भी मैं इस दुख, इस शोक को सुखाने वाला कोई उपाय नहीं देखता हूं. अब आप देखिए, ही इज टेलिंग कि ऑन द वन हैंड यू आर माय टीचर, आई सरेंडर टू यू. ऑन द अदर हैंड, ही इज टेलिंग एट द सेम टाइम in the very next verse that even if I acquire the entire wealth and all the prosperity of this world, I do not find a way out which can, pacify my shock, my, what you call inner pain and inner trouble which I am facing. So he has already made a pronouncement, though this is a contradiction here. While after making the pronouncement, he should have kept quiet and listened to Sri Krishna, but he did not do that. He made another pronouncement that मैं कोई ऐसा उपाय नहीं देखता कि मेरे शोक को जो ठीक कर सके. So this is another very important verse which shows that how, emotionally turbulent Arjuna was at that particular moment. And then we will take the next verse, which is, even though the verse is from Sanjay, but it reveals much more than we think it reveals. Then Sanjay is saying, हे राजन, निद्रा को जीतने वाला अर्जुन अंतर्यामी श्री कृष्ण महाराज के प्रति इस प्रकार कहकर फिर श्री गोविंद भगवान से युद्ध नहीं करूंगा स्पष्ट रूप से कह दिया और चुप होके बैठ गया. Now Arjuna here tells that I am not going to fight, while he is telling Krishna before that I am surrendering to you and you tell me what should be done, you give me the shiksha at this very difficult time. But then he has made the first pronouncement that I do not find any way to overcome those internal troubles of myself. And secondly, he says I will not fight. He has taken a decision that I will not fight, and he sits down. Now that is a final. If he sits down and I will not fight, there is nothing which Krishna can say him. What can he say him? Because he has taken his decision that I will not fight. So let's go back. So this is what, and then Krishna, smiles on that. Why he smiles? Because, this is a normal human tendency. That when we tell things very emphatically, it means we have doubt about them. The doubt is reflected in that emphasis itself. अब some people say, मैं आपकी कसम खा के कहता हूं कि मैंने ये कार्य नहीं किया. It means that he himself is not convinced what he's telling is right. That's why he is using the word मैं आपकी कसम खा के कहता हूं. So anybody who is taking extra vocabulary to express, to emphasize his word, it means there's some doubt in that. And that doubt becomes very clear. Some people say, no, it is 200% correct. It means the guy has, some doubt about it. Otherwise, he simply says it's correct. That's it. Correct is correct. He doesn't have to say it is 200%. How can it be 200% first of all? So those kind of words which are used to provide a special emphasis to certain, statements, those actually reflect upon the weakness or the untruthfulness of that statement itself. That is how it happens. Like in the situation of war, the enemy always claimed that I have downed 20 aircrafts of the enemy and I have killed 500 soldiers of the enemy. Now those statements are actually a falsity, because it becomes very clear the way these are emphasized. These are all propaganda things. So the what you call the falsity of a statement comes out when you give more and more emphasis on it. So here Arjuna is saying that I will not fight. Then Krishna will naturally smile that if you are not going to fight, why are you asking me for the advice? Why have you told me that you are surrendered to me? And tell me what should I do in this circumstances. So that is why Krishna smiled, and then that the next verse we will take now. इसके उपरांत हे भरतवंशी धृतराष्ट्र, that is what Sanjay is telling. अंतर्यामी श्री कृष्ण महाराज ने दोनों सेनाओं के बीच में उस शोक युक्त अर्जुन को हंसते हुए से ये वचन कहे. हंसते हुए से ये वचन कहे. Now they are standing in the middle of the battlefield. Arjuna is in a perplexed dilemma. He is crying. He doesn't know what to do, and he is one of the principal warriors of the, Pandavas army. If he is not there, then obviously the Pandavas will have serious problem in fighting a war. In that kind of situation, Krishna is smiling. Now Krishna is smiling. Why? For 2-3 reasons. One reason is, of course, clear on the falsity of Arjuna's statement, the contradiction, that on the one hand he is surrendering to him, on the other hand he is making very clear pronouncement that I am not going to fight, and I do not see any method by which my internal turbulence can be pacified. Even if it is, even if I am given the kingdom of the entire earth and the heavens. So that is one reason here. The second reason of Krishna's smile is that Arjuna is talking like a Pandit. He is talking like the language of the Shastras, but he knows nothing about the Shastras. On the one hand, he is talking about the Shastras, behaving like a Pandit. On the other hand, his own behavior is totally against the Shastras, against opposite of Shastras. So there is another reason he is smiling. And third reason for his smiling is obviously to pacify Arjuna, that don't get excited, don't be emotionally turbulent. As he has used earlier the words, this is not fit for you. You are an Arya, don't become an Arya. You are in a very higher category, and this is not befitting your conduct and behavior. So these are the reasons why Arjuna why Krishna used this smile at this moment. And he's also smiling, the fourth reason, वो बचपनापन जो है ना, the immaturity of Arjuna. He is smiling on the immaturity of Arjuna, that you are so immature that you don't know what you are saying and what you are doing. Because whole life, Arjuna has been aspiring to fight a war against Duryodhana, whole life. Because he has been suffering from Arjuna's side, from Duryodhana's side for, first they tried to kill Bhim in very childhood when he was very, I think 6-7 years old. That was the time. And then they, of course, created all kinds of problem, but then finally they sent them to Lakshagraha, and they wanted to kill all of them, including the mother, Kunti. So all of them, they thought, and they actually thought that they are killed, and they thought they will got rid of them completely. And then came the Swayamvar of Draupadi, where Karna was in a way insulted by Draupadi. And then finally they discovered that it was Arjun who won the Swayamvar and who took. So that was another reason for Duryodhana to be very angry and upset with him. And then the kingdom was divided, and the most infertile part of the kingdom, Khandoprastha, was given to the Pandavas, and they had to work very, very hard to set up their capital there and to bring some prosperity in that deserted part of the kingdom. So that was another reason. And then what happened, the game of Chorus, and where there was an attempt to denude Draupadi in the what you call the courtyard, the courtroom, or rather the राज्य जो जहाँ राजा बैठता है, that Shabagraha, in that very place they wanted, they tried to denude her. So all those things were in their mind, and they were preparing for this war for such a long time. And now, naturally, Sri Krishna is smiling because he has forgotten all that, and he's talking about, that I'm ready to go and beg for my living, and I will abandon this war and go away, as if he was not even a party. All these 18 Aksharohini, there's two armies which are standing there in such a large number, lakhs of people standing there, as if, he will abandon and go away. So this was the reason Krishna was, smiling at him and telling, and then actually the what we call sermon or the spiritual lessons of Krishna begins from this point onwards. The 11th verse of second chapter onwards, the spiritual dialogue, the spiritual thoughts of Krishna come out in a most profound way. Now, this chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called Sankhya Yoga. So we should understand what is Sankhya Yoga, because uh, we will go from chapter the verse 11 onwards in our next session. But this is time to understand what is Sankhya Yoga, because this chapter is called Sankhya Yoga. The previous chapter was Arjun Visad Yoga. Now, what is Sankhya? Sankhya means number. And this is a philosophy which is one of the most ancient philosophy in the world, and one of the most profound philosophies explaining the existence of this universe. How this universe existed, how it works, and what are the factors, ruling the functioning of this universe. So there are 3-4 principal elements in this. Now, this philosophy is very ancient. This is one of the 6 philosophies we have. And this is supposed to be the most ancient one. And Sri Krishna will actually, his dialogue, 11th verse onwards, is based on the Sankhya philosophy. And Sankhya philosophy is the most cogent explanation of the existence of this universe. Now, what is the fundamentals of Sankhya? Fundamentals of Sankhya are 2. First is Prakriti and then Purus, or you can call it Purus and Prakriti. Purus is what we call the consciousness, the conscious power, or we can, in modern sense, we can call it the God or the Paramatma or the Almighty or the Supreme. So that is the word Purus has been used in that sense in Sankhya philosophy. The second is the Prakriti, is the matter, all the matter which surrounds us. Now, Prakriti has been explained in 5 forms, the Panch Mahabhut, that is the Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jal, or Prithvi. These are the 5 great elements constituting Prakriti. So, on the one hand, Prakriti is the matter, and Purus is the one who actually provides life to everything. That is why in so many of our ancient writings, we have used the Kumar's, example, that जैसे कुम्हार घड़े को बनाता है, the same way the Paramatma uses the matter and इस सृष्टि की रचना करता है, इस सृष्टि को बनाता है. जैसे कुम्हार मिट्टी को लेके उसको चाक पे घुमा के और उसको एक शेप देता है, और शेप देके घड़ा तैयार हो जाता है. उसी तरह से परमात्मा इस मैटर को, प्रकृति को लेके अपने जो कॉन्शियसनेस है उसका यूज करते हुए डिफरेंट फॉर्म्स एंड डिफरेंट नेम्स का क्रिएशन करके इस संसार को बनाता है. सो दैट इज द analogy which has been used to explain in a way the philosophy of Sankhya. So on the one hand there is a matter, on the other hand, there is consciousness, and the combination of the two is reflected in the entire existence we see all around us. There's nothing beyond that. That is one part. The second part of, that question will also come here later on, but we will deal with that in greater detail that time. But right now, we'll just deal that if that is the case, if the Almighty is running this whole universe and making it in this form, why people conduct themselves in a very cruel manner, sometimes in a very oppressive manner? What happens to them? So there, the Sankhya philosophy says that the nature is run by three gunas, that is Sat, Raj, and Tam. These three gunas are part and parcel of the nature, and all the good and bad happens because of the combination of these three gunas. The play of these three gunas provides goodness and badness and neutrality in this world. So these are the factors in Sankhya philosophy. In brief, this is the brief approach to Sankhya philosophy. And then these factors actually give rise to the human activities. Now, human activities, you can call them in 23 parts or 24 parts. Now, those parts are that the 5 perception senses of perception. Those 5 senses of perception, that is, we have our sense of touch, then sense of sight, then we have your sense of hearing, sense of taste, and the what we call sound, that is hearing, taste. Let me go back there.
Smell.
From the space it comes your sense of hearing, from the air the sense of touch, and from fire the sense of sight, from water the sense of taste, and from earth sense of smell. This is how the 5 senses are connected to the 5 great elements. So these are the 5 senses, and these 5 senses have 5 tanmatras. Tanmatra is the senses in themselves don't work. Like ear is a stool thing. It's an equipment, it's an instrument. But there is a activity which runs through it, which is called tanmatra, how it works. So the tanmatras are actually, in case of space, it is hearing, sunna, hearing is the tanmatra. Then in case of sense of touch, the touching is the tanmatra, the touch, spars. In case of eyes, the sight is the tanmatra, the roop you see. The sight you see only because of the roop. You see the roop, then the sight works. So that is the tanmatra there. Then for the taste, the taste is the swad, jo aata hai. That is the one which is for the sight of taste, the sense of taste. And the smell, the gandh. Gandh is the tanmatra for nostrils. So these are the 5 plus 5. The 5 is stool, that is the gross senses, and 5, the tanmatras of those, that makes 10. And then the 5, our, what you call motor organs, or the karmendriya. And there 5 tanmatra of that makes 20 in all. And then we have 5 pranas, that is mukhya pran, then saman pran, then apan pran, then vyan pran, and udan pran. The 5 pranas. So that makes 25. And then man, buddhi, and ahankar. So all these, or some people also put chit, so 28 or 29, activities happen. And that is how the whole world runs. The whole human system works with these 28 or 29 activities, which are created with the combination of Prakriti and Purus. Prakriti gives the physical instrument, and Purush gives the consciousness into those instruments, and that is why the entire human activities and animal activities happen. In case of animals, the mind, buddhi, the four, the what you call man, buddhi, ahankar, and chit. It's not very active. It's less active in their case, but all other things are active in everybody's case, in all the life forms. So this is how the Sankhya philosophy explains the functioning of the universe. It is in the Sankhya the duality, that consciousness is one and matter is another one. It is not Advait in that sense, because the Advait philosophy says that even the matter comes from consciousness. The matter originates from consciousness. And therefore, Sankhya is the first step and Advait is the next step. Actually, if we go deeper and if we analyze it further, we will realize that matter also comes from consciousness. But we will, examine that part in the later, sections of Bhagavad Gita. But today, since this chapter is called Sankhya chapter, I thought it is relevant to explain what is Sankhya philosophy. So the Sankhya philosophy is basically based on duality, that is Prakriti and Purus, and Prakriti is constituted of 5 great elements, and then it has 3 gunas. The combination of the 5 great elements and 3 gunas give rise to these 28 or 29 faculties in our own body system. Those faculties are created because of this Prakriti, but the consciousness provides what you call the motor or the power to those faculties. So on the one hand, you make a sthul sarira, and then you provide consciousness through purusa into that. So this is how the explanation of Sankhya goes. And the explanation in this chapter, which will come about the functioning of the humanity, is based on this philosophy, and that is why it is called Sankhya Yoga. So I thought it was important to understand why this chapter is called Sankhya Yoga, and what is the basic fundamentals, what are the basic fundamentals of Sankhya philosophy. So I would conclude here today. We have covered verses 1 to 10, and in the next session we will start from 11, which is the real spiritual lesson from Lord Krishna. So thank you very much, and if you have any queries, please let me know now.